We've noticed a real increase in the number of care homes that have started using Soldo recently, and we can't imagine how difficult it must be at the moment. So what we have tried to do is put together some content that could be useful and at least ease some of the burdens that care homes are facing at the moment. So the first thing we tried to do was try to understand why it is that care homes are suddenly being attracted to Soldo and what exactly it is that we're solving for them. Now, of course, a lot of key workers are still travelling around, so the more traditional use of Soldo is still really relevant for those sorts of people. They still need to fill their car up with fuel, they maybe still need to pay for incidental things while they're out and about. So giving people a Soldo card to use in that way is definitely helpful. The next area that we've seen is that in some care homes there can be quite a high turnover of staff. And because you've got people that need to go out and incur expenses on behalf of the organisation, what we're seeing care homes doing is providing those new starters with a Soldo card with a set balance on it and certain restrictions around spending so that they can freely share funds with those people and let them do their jobs without feeling like they're risking money or exposing themselves to people they don't particularly know too well. And the third is around the use of cash. What we're hearing from the care homes that we've spoken to is that very often a manager will go to an ATM, draw out however much money they need, and then go and physically distribute that to homes within their organisation. And that brings with it a ton of problems, particularly at the moment. So you've got the admin burden of doing that, and the admin burden of managing petty cash anyway is not really where the carers that we've spoken to want to spend their time. Obviously they want to be looking after their residents and making sure they're safe, so doing petty cash reconciliations, things like that is just not a great use of time for them. But clearly having a manager going around physically to different residences and delivering cash is a big risk at the moment in terms of the movement of people and the risks around the virus. So we're having a situation where care homes are really kind of tying themselves in knots to get cash distributed and shared around the different residences, and then even cash itself, once they've got it, is difficult or more tricky to use anyway. And so we're seeing people giving each home or each residence a card that they can then top up remotely, and then whatever they need they can go and get much more easily, and then of course get back to their job of looking after their residents. So what we're going to do in a second is spin into the product. And for those of you that are already using Soldo, we can show you how to set this up to get these benefits. If you're not already using it for those purposes and it would help, we can show you how to set Soldo up so that you can achieve those things and hopefully make that a bit quicker for you. So we've talked about a couple of ways that Soldo can help. Let's go and have a look at what that looks like in the product. If you've got key workers that might be out and about still and incurring expenses as they're travelling around, one of the areas that they'll be using the solution most will be within the mobile app. And there'll be some common questions that they might have for you, such as what can I spend, what limits have I got, that they can actually answer themselves within the app rather than needing to come back to you. So I just want to show you very quickly where they can find those things so that they don't need to spend their time and yours by coming and asking those questions. So when we first go into the app, as you can see on the screen here, I can see the cards that I've got available, so I can swipe between them. And then just on this dashboard here, I can see what the settings are. So I can see if the card is locked or not. I can see if I can use it online. I can see if it can be used at a cash point. I can even look at my budget controls and see what limits I've got over given time periods. Also, I can look within the spend categories area. And here it will tell me if I'm restricted on any types of expenses. So it might well be that we've turned off food shopping, for example. We may have turned off transport. And then here I can see within the app what I can and can't use the card for. Now ordinarily you could come into activity and see some of your recent transactions. Now of course I'm not traveling around, so I don't have a huge amount in here. So what I'm going to come and do is click on the menu and go to transactions, and there we'll see the most recent transactions that I had when I was still able to move around. Interestingly, we'll see then the list that we've got. There are a few icons on here that help us understand what's going on with these transactions. So a paperclip means that there's an attachment with the item. So I've taken the photograph and added the receipt. And the little tag icon means that I've filled in the notes that I need to be doing as per my expenses policy. So as a user, I can see the list of items that I've spent. I can see what I still need to attach receipts for very quickly and easily by just scrolling down the list here. And those of you in the finance teams will be spending more of your time inside the web app. So let's have a look at what we can get from here and a few tips that might be useful to you. So the default screen is the dashboard, and on here you can see a little bit of information about what money you've got available and what each of the balances are for each of the people that have been issued with cards. If we want to go and get some information about what a particular user's been spending or get some insights on that, we come to reports and then statements. And we can either run this for a group or for one individual. So I'm just going to run this for me, and I'm going to click See Transactions. And just like we saw in the app a moment ago, we've got the paperclip icon that tells us which of these transactions have got receipts or images attached, and we've also got the notes section on the right here, so we can see what has been updated. And as you can see, I've not been a very good employee here in terms of keeping this up to date. This is a fairly common problem, and we have a nice way of dealing with this. So if we come into Configure and then Reminders, we can set a rule whereby Soldo will remind each of the staff members if they've not fully completed all of the information that they need to. What we're saying on here, for example, is that for every transaction, a user needs to upload an attachment. And we could go a little bit further than that and say, actually, we also want them to add a note. And then if a user hasn't completed all of these, they'll get a reminder email. We mentioned that there might be scenarios where you've got either new staff or temporary staff that need to incur expenses on behalf of the organisation. But being new and being unfamiliar, you may not be comfortable giving them the company credit card or a large stack of cash to go and spend. So the solution is to give them their own individual card with set limits and certain restrictions and rules in place. And I'm going to show you how to set up the rules for a user just now. So we're going to go into Configure, and then we're going to go to Users. And we're going to come down and pick the user, go to Wallets and Cards, and I'm going to go and pick the card that I want to add some rules to. We can see that we've got some options. So do I want this card to be used online or only in person? I can choose on or off there. I can choose whether it can be used via contactless payment. I can choose whether it can be used at a cash point, and if so, I can set limits for those amounts as well. I can also choose which types of expenses can be put through the card as well. These are powered by MasterCard's merchant codes, and we might decide that actually certain staff, we don't want them to go and book hotels, we don't want them to go and buy timeshares, certainly. And so we can turn these off and have a greater amount of control over what the card can be used for. Of course, I can control how much money is on the card, but beyond that, I can also control how much can be spent through it as well. So I might decide that we want a maximum budget for the entire month of £1,000. I could decide that I want a weekly budget of no more than 300, and maybe a daily budget of no more than £100. I could set a max per transaction, so I might decide that if I've given somebody a card to go and buy tea bags, they're probably not going to need to go and spend more than 25 quid in one go. Many of the rules and settings that we've just looked at will be relevant for new employees, but they'll also be relevant if you wanted to use a Soldo card in place of your petty cash tin. One setting that's particularly useful is the auto lock after one transaction setting just here. And what this means is that after the card's been used once, it will lock. So if you wanted to give somebody a card to go and buy one particular thing, you could use this setting to make sure that it can't be used after that's been done until they've got back and you've turned the settings back again. What we can also do from a petty cash replacement perspective is look at how we manage a float within a card on Soldo. And to do that, we're going to look at the automatic transfer section just here. Now, I've got a few options here. All of them are switched off at the moment, but I'm going to turn on an option here to set the balance to £350 when it is lower than, say, 75. What this means is when the card gets down to £75, Soldo will top it back up from your main company wallet back up to 350 again. We can put a limit on the total number of transfers, so we might cap the whole thing at £1,000 for the month. What I could do instead of moving the money over when the balance gets low is to set up a periodic transfer. So we might say every month on the 1st, I want you to send over another £350 or set the balance to 350. So that removes the admin of trying to distribute money either to wallets for people or to individual residences or homes from the central office. I hope the features and tips that we've just looked at can help you get the most out of using Soldo.
To learn more about Soldo and how we work with accountants and bookkeepers, head to soldo.com/partner.